Welcome back to another episode of Spiritual Teachers Podcast. With me today is Dr. Christie Smirl. Uh, it's such an honor to have you on today, Dr. Christie. Thank you so much for joining on.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
Yeah, this is going to be a powerful podcast because Dr. Christie has some amazing qualifications. She is a doctor of Ayurveda, a nurse practitioner, Hatha yoga and Yin yoga teacher trainer. She's a tantric shaman, a Reiki healer, and an author of several books. Uh, one of the first book is Ayurveda and Yoga Wisdom. The second one is Chakra Activation, and then as well as two children's books, Cringy Cat and Brian's Unfortunate Brainstorm. And Dr. Christie is also a professor of yogic sciences and Ayurveda at Southern California University. So we got some really juicy and exciting topics for you today. The first one is we'll share about Dr. Christie's awakening journey. We'll talk about veganism. We'll talk about Himalayan tantric shamanism, yin yoga and the differences from other yogas, Ayurvedic emotional regulation techniques, and Ayurvedic mental and spiritual regulation. Man, we got a powerful podcast for today. So, uh, I'd love to invite you, Dr. Christie, to just share a little bit about how your awakening journey started, what kind of triggered it, and got you on the roller coaster.
Well, thank you again for having me on here.
Of
And
course.
let's see, where would I start? My spiritual awakening, I would consider myself as a child very highly spiritual, but with no spiritual guidelines.
Hmm.
But if I got right down to the nitty-gritty, I felt like I was at the top of my career. I was a nurse practitioner and I was working in the emergency department, and I thought, wow, I've really learned all there is to know about health, quote
Hmm.
unquote.
Hmm.
And I felt sick. My body hurt. I was only in my 30s and I had some very specific, unusual health conditions that nobody could give me answers to. I'd go to the doctor's lounge at lunch and say, hey, can you take a look at this? And I would talk to the dermatologist, internal medicine doctor, and all these specialists and have these different tests, and nobody could figure out what was wrong with me.
Hmm.
And I think more so than that, a lot of my clients and patients would say, is this the best I can get short of long-term disability, long-term medication, or even surgery? And I would catch myself saying, like, yeah, this is the best we can get you. Or at least that
Hmm.
was the most resources I had. The other thing that really was an impetus to my spiritual awakening was knowing what I did about just medicine. I felt spiritually and emotionally bankrupt.
Hmm.
I didn't feel good in my mind, in my skin. And I thought, if this is the best I can get myself, I need to retool and learn more. So, long story short, I ended up going into yoga teacher training. And within about 6 months, I ended up going into Ayurvedic medicine training.
Hmm.
And that was a long journey. I ended up getting my RYT 500 in yoga training. Then I ended up, first, I was just going to do maybe 2 years of Ayurvedic training. And then I decided to do a doctorate program in Ayurvedic
Hmm.
medicine. And the combination of both of those took me from one state to almost a personality and health status that I no longer recognized.
Mm.
It helped me shed so much shadow work, grief, anger, hatred, and it put my entire physical body back into order. So, in a nutshell, that's where it all started. And I
Mm-hmm.
think at that time, my daughter was maybe 5 years old. So, almost nearly 18 years ago, I started
Okay.
that journey. And
Wow.
I had always done yoga on VHS,
Hmm.
DVD,
Right.
things like that.
Before the internet.
Yeah, before the internet, before
Oh,
discs even.
right.
But that was just the physical aspect. Even the
Mhm.
first time I went into a yoga class, a formal class, I thought, what's this ripoff laying down on the mat at the end? Was this nap time?
Mm-hmm.
And then I would find myself crying. I thought, oh, how embarrassing.
Mm-hmm.
Here I came for a workout and I'm doing this weird emotional shedding.
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought, this is what I need.
Mm-hmm.
And I just never looked back from there. Never looked back.
Beautiful.
The better I got, the more I wanted to know. The more I knew, the less I understood, and then the farther I went.
Right.
And I'm
Right.
still doing it. I still have active teachers.
Right. Right. That's so beautiful. That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I think, you know, there's several different types of yogas available to people now in the Western world. And from yin yoga to hatha yoga to vinyasa yoga to kundalini yoga to ashtanga yoga, and those are just the yogas that are the movement, quote unquote, yogas, right? Because yoga is such a broad category, and it's so intertwined with Ayurveda in India. And I'm super excited and grateful that you went on this journey, because I've worked in the medical field, and for me it was always like, what else can I do to help people? Because I worked in the physical therapy field, and I would see people coming back in 3 year cycles. If they hadn't healed the emotions that were related to their injury, they would be back in 3 years with the same surgery, or a surgery on the same spot on their body or very close by. And it became very clear after about 10 years of being in that field of like the cycles that were happening. And did you notice that in the nurse practitioner world as well?
Absolutely. We'd have patients come back, particularly when I was working not only workman's compensation trauma, but also in the advanced wound healing clinic.
Mm-hmm.
And in the wound healing clinic, you could see that direct correlation between unresolved spiritual and mental pinnings. And then you would see the wound flare up at a certain time of the year, same location, same, emotional underlying etiologies. I remember one gentleman, it was the first time I think I truly realized how much spiritual well-being connected with, let's take in his example, a wound. He had had a wound since 1972. That's old
Whoa.
I am. And I remember the first time I asked him about it, I said, what happened to your leg? Can you tell me more? Because obviously I'm assigned to making sure you at least don't lose your leg.
Mm-hmm.
And he would tell me these vicious things about himself. And he would say, oh, how terrible he was. And he deserved this wound. And,
Wow.
all of this self-hatred and non-forgiving.
Mm-hmm.
And he would tell me how he had been so mean to his wife who was passed and he couldn't forgive himself. And so one day, I think it was the third time I was taking care of his wound. And I asked him, I said, have you ever considered that if you forgive yourself and allow that harshness to go away, that maybe your wound will heal better or maybe even partially close because it was huge. It was the entire lower leg.
Whoa.
And We talked for quite a bit for several weeks, and within 6 months, his wound healed
Wow.
and he forgave himself. And
Mm,
so it was at that moment I was like, "Ooh, like these things are so undeniably connected. We've got to put all these pieces together."
hmm. That's such a beautiful story. And it makes my logical mind, wants to see how it's connected, right? Like let's say somebody comes in and they had so much knee pain and they got a knee replacement, right? And somebody would say, yeah, that's normal because this person was getting elderly. They were having a hard time walking. They were rubbing bone on bone, and that's a great surgery for them to get so that they can, recover and walk better. And that was my mindset that I was taught and that I went into it with. And then the deeper I got into spirituality, the more I was like, okay, so there's energy stuck there, even though it is bone on bone, and that's the physical aspect. But there are people that are bone on bone that don't have any knee pain and that are still walking really well and never need a knee replacement. For many for many years, people have this. It's a very new surgery. It's only less than probably 60 years old, and before that, people either would heal or they would just be wheelchair bound or those kind of things. But from what I've learned about knee pain, for example, is that it's the person having blocks moving forward in life into what they're really here to do, like their purpose, right? And when I didn't have any examples that I mean, I saw people working on themselves to a degree, but nothing really, really deep like that, like you mentioned with the self-forgiveness and things like that. And so back then I was still kind of starting my spiritual journey too. So I knew there was some sort of other components to why they kept coming back, but I wasn't sure what those were. So yeah, it's really interesting. Is there anything else that you know about knees, for example, that you've been taught that could relate to those injuries?
So some things that I always keep in the back of my mind these days regarding knees. Number one, it's associated with the Muladhara chakra, so the root chakra,
Mm-hmm.
and the main governing shadow emotion of the root chakra is fear. So, like you said,
Mm,
fear of moving forward, or sometimes it's just stress, which is a form of fear.
mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's anger, which can be a form of fear.
Mm-hmm.
So fear in general will cause us to ambulate differently. It'll lock up our bodies and cause us to constrict. Sometimes just, you'll see people who are fearful, they'll be toe pointers in their sleep, or they'll have a lot of quad or calf pain.
Mm,
The other thing that's interesting, which you as a therapist know, that causes all sorts of misalignment of the knee.
mm-hmm.
Another interesting thing about the knee is anywhere in the lower legs, the legs in general. I we often hear about the seven primary chakras, root chakra to crown chakra in the
Mm-hmm.
center of the body. But in the legs, there are what are called Patala chakras. And
Mm,
these are more associated with our deeper, darker emotions or shadow emotions that are unresolved. So many times people with lower extremity problems is their shadow work that needs to be done.
mm, okay.
Mm.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, I mean, we could talk for hours about different parts of the body and different things like that. Do you mention any of that in your book?
I talk about all the different shadowy motions in the chakra alignment book, but only for the seven primaries.
Okay.
So we
Okay.
didn't go into the Patala or the leg chakras in that book.
Okay.
It would have been a whole nother book altogether.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that would be powerful. That would be powerful if you
True.
felt called to do a book about that as well. I
True.
think I've never heard of the Patala chakras, so this is I'm always learning. I'm always
They're
learning.
essentially they're essentially associated with what they call the Nagas, which are considered serpents, or the
Hmm.
Naga underworld. I just like to call it the shadow realm,
Hmm.
shadow emotions, the
Hmm.
uncured unconsciousness. Because once we become aware of our shadowy self or our lower vibrational self, then we hopefully deliberately overcome those limitations or neuroses,
Hmm.
and then we become the hero of that whole shadow realm. A
Hmm.
lot of people are afraid of their shadow self and they, oh no, these are my deep desires or my deep fears or my deep weirdnesses.
Hmm.
And yeah, true, they can be dangerous to tinker with, but why not just get in there and roto-rooter everything out and say, boom, there it is.
Right.
Okay.
That's yeah, that's my approach. That's my approach, is like if I'm aware of it, that means that I need to look at it and
Yeah,
to try to, you know, one thing that I think can be a little overwhelming sometimes for people is like, well, I know when I started doing shadow work, it felt like sometimes I didn't know who to go to or who to talk to and which facilitators I resonated with. And so for me, one thing that really helped was just to set the intention and speak it out loud and say, I'm calling in all the situations and all the people that are meant to guide and assist me in learning about this and helping me release this, and
absolutely.
then letting it go, right? That's a bit important piece of the manifestation of that is just letting go and just allowing for spirit to bring in the people that will guide me. And that's what happened through my journey, and it continues to happen. So, and then there's these beautiful mirrors that appear, throughout the journey and really show me where I still need to dig in a little deeper or where I'm still have some blocks and things like that. But the self-forgiveness journey is crucial in the beginning stages of shadow work, I believe.
It is. And I often tell people in shadow work, don't think of it like the big bad boogeyman.
Hmm.
We can make our shadow selves our ally. We can use it as fuel once we sort it out. That was one of the main reasons why I went so far into Himalayan tantric shamanism is, in one of my spiritual practices. So my main initiation was in the Sant Mat lineage. It's the lineage of saints.
Hmm.
And I was like, I'm still so shadowy. And they really emphasize, like, if we look at right hand path and left hand path of Tantra or spirituality, the right hand path main practices typically focus on the third eye chakra and up. Whereas left hand path or tantric work often is that roto-rooter that takes care of the lower chakras. And some people just don't have a lot of shadow work to do. And I had my fair share. And
Hmm.
so I really sought out a highly qualified guru teacher and said, I need professional, accountable, regular curriculum and assistance with this. And
Hmm.
so I made sure that the teacher, the guru that I selected was able to, meet with me on regular intervals, spoke my language, had formal curriculum, and would hold me accountable to my progress also. Because otherwise, people who go into Tantra, true Tantra, or the left-hand path, they just get lost in the shadows.
Mm,
End up, kind of captured in their own delusion and never come back.
okay. So they kind of fall to lust, you would say?
Lust, anger, hatred, or just being, I'm so dark,
Mm, uh-huh. Yeah, like
and
associating
it
with
becomes
that.
like a badge.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that that's wrong or bad,
Mm-hmm.
but if we truly study, particularly in Ayurveda, what's the true nature of the soul? Peaceful and joyous, not dark, doomsday, evil, I'm so, yeah, vicious. That usually indicates to me that there's deep shadow work that still needs to be done. And I'm no judge of where anybody is on their pathway at all.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe that once we transform ourselves on that darker shadow work side, we should be able to cross the abyss and come out a bright light of inspiration, motivation, encouragement, and to truly feel joyous inside.
Yeah, because it's about the experience of life, right? And I feel like there's also karmic aspects, right, to those quote unquote evil things that people may choose to do, and everyone, I believe, has certain level of free will, and so with that, you reap what you sow,
Correct.
and like you were saying with that gentleman, he seemed like he wasn't very good to his wife, and so this happened to his body, and he had all this remorse and maybe regret and sorrow and things like that, which are really low frequencies, right? And so that manifested these illnesses for him, which looked like a wound, and yeah, I think that you gotta be really careful with that, and I mean, for shadow work, I believe that it's important to go in there and not just look at it, but also transmute it and integrate it into self so that it's no longer running the show in the subconscious, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like if lust is the background noise, right? It's like that person, no matter how nice they dress, no matter what, people that are tuned in are going to feel it, number one. And number two, that's going to eventually manifest itself, and then there's going to be a crash, if it's done in a non-righteous way or not in a good way. You hear so many of these gurus who went and had so many students and followers, and then you find out either at some point or later after they died that they were sleeping with several younger women and things like that, and it's it's sad. It's sad that so many of them didn't integrate their shadows in that way, and maybe they didn't have
And
the opportunity.
and also sad that, the people do so much spiritual work and they gain all of this bright light and ability to enchant people. Either do you inspire people or do you enchant them?
Hmm.
And when they use it for the active choice of enchanting so that they can take from their students, which is wrong,
Hmm.
that's vampiric.
Right.
And that indicates that they were stuck in their shadow zone still because they were vampiric to their students.
Right.
A true teacher, a spiritual teacher in particular, should give to the point where the student is then able to go off on their own.
Right.
When we become enchanters rather than inspirers, That was too many R's, inspectors, then we have to recognize that those people have become truly vampiric and they're becoming predators.
hmm
And that,
siphoning energy.
yeah,
Hmm
yeah,
Yeah.
energy predators.
hmm
And I know everybody's in their own place, and we're not here to bash anybody,
hmm
but I think that students, when they're seeking a teacher, need to really analyze that. But unfortunately, they don't always have those full spidey senses in the beginning.
Yeah.
They can be taken advantage of.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Uh, I have one of the last podcasts that came out. It's not live as we're recording, but it's going to be before after we release. We talked about that and we dove into how to differentiate between a true spiritual teacher and somebody who's putting on a really good facade. So yeah, it's an important topic for sure, and yeah, it's 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 one of those things that people have to look out for and be really aware and mindful of. So it's good to bring awareness to that for sure. And I am really curious about the Himalayan tantric shamanism. So how is this different than uh, just regular tantra?
Well, first of all, when we say the word tantra, people's eyebrows go up and down.
Right, right,
And they think, ooh, some sexy, saucy stuff.
right.
Tantra in and of itself means to transcend, to loom, to weave, to, as my Tantra teacher, Krishna Kali Das, he is my spiritual teacher, my spiritual father. He says that transcendence is what we're aiming for.
Mm,
And, a lot of times there is a misunderstanding what Tantra is. We have our newer age Tantra.
hmm
Sometimes we see that and we get confused because maybe it's a weekend class on how to, have better sex with your partner or how to, be more sassy and saucy and in touch with your divine feminine or sexuality, and that's all fine, 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 fine. But I went for the old school Himalayan tantric practices.
hmm
So my particular guru is traditionally trained by gurus that came out of the Himalayan tantric lineage.
Okay.
And that work incorporates something much different than we often see in the more new age or popular buzz term tantra classes. So in this form of tantra, there is no tantra without mantra and yantra.
hmm
So people will often say, "What did you do the most of in your tantric training?" And
hmm
I'll say, "Mantra." I got
hmm
thumb tendonitis. That's what I got from chanting so much, like 10 japa rounds a day
Wow.
minimum.
So and you're holding a mala?
Hmm
Okay.
Holy blood and just round after round after round after round. So, by the end of the day, you've said over 1,000 repetitions of a mantra.
Wow.
Now, in this type of tantra, one of the longest periods of time I spent was working with the Dasha Mahavidyas. And the Dasha Mahavidyas are the 10 wisdom goddesses of the Adi Shakti Ma, or as I affectionately know her as Kali Ma.
Right.
So Kali Ma has 10 emanations. She has over 1,008 emanations, but in this particular tantric training, you spend months and months and months engrossed in each form. And so you look at your shadow self, like we were talking about earlier.
hmm
Let's say if we took, for example, Chinnamasta, which is one of her forms that people are often like, oh. she's terrible and frightening looking. She's
Yeah.
chopped off her own head and she's nudie booty and there's lightning in the background. There's blood spurtling everywhere. And they're like, I don't know if I like this.
Mm-hmm.
But really, it's our way of going in with the Divine Mother and saying, I decapitate my own ego.
Mm-hmm.
Cure me of my own mental neurosis and bring me to a state of consciousness that is as free of my uncured ego as possible. And then we do this surrender, down into prostration, head onto the ground, and you say to the mother, please cure my ego.
Mm-hmm.
Because ego's not a bad word. We just need to understand what part of ego serves us in our spiritual process and what part of ego is just some goopity goppity facade that's blocking us.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for instance, when I worked with Chinnamasta, it was 10 rounds of 108 mantras to her every day and ritual, going to the altar, bowing down, head to the ground, lighting the candle, lighting the incense, putting offerings out, setting my intention, saying, Chinnamasta, this is what's gumpity inside of me.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is where my boogeyman is. And can you please help me rectify these aspects of myself that really are not in my highest good? Maybe they served a purpose at one time.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they used to be fuel, but now it's fermented and spoiled, but I've
Mm-hmm.
held on to it somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And really going in and doing selfless searching inside and surrendering every day, saying, please, take these things from me, make them shiny, make them new, make them something that I can actually use now in my life.
Mm-hmm.
When we do deep tantra work, a lot of times we find out that the things that are inside of us are ancestral.
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to go inside and fearlessly uproot portions of yourself and just give them up and say, look at me, I'm bare.
Mm-hmm.
And create a vessel that is pure, create an ego that is pure and completely dedicated to devotion for higher work. That's Tantra. You
Yeah.
know, does Tantra use sexual energy? For sure it does. When I
Mm-hmm.
first started, I went through years and years. I'm still in tantric training. I
Mm-hmm.
meet my Baba, my spiritual father, every single month. I get new curriculum and evaluations every single month. And one of my neuroses was like we were talking about before, lustful energy. I was like, this isn't serving me.
Mm-hmm.
And when we look at it in yoga and Ayurveda, like in yoga, if we know the 8 limbs of Ashtanga or the 8 limbs of yoga, not the physical Ashtanga, but the Ashtanga limbs,
Mm-hmm.
one of them is brahmacharya. So they have the yamas, the niyamas, the things to observe, the things not to observe for best success. In brahmacharya, they talk about levels of celibacy, whether it be abstaining from illicit sex or whether it be, complete celibacy.
Mm-hmm.
And in Ayurveda, they talk very specifically about don't squander your sexual energy. Why? Because you lose spiritual vitality. In Ayurveda, they call it ojas. And ojas is what brings us a good immune system, excellent complexion, that shine, that glow,
Mm-hmm.
and fuels into the subtle mind, the subtle body. Well, if we're always, blowing our load and losing our vital energy, we become drained.
Right.
And that's like leaving your gas tank open and just
Mm-hmm.
losing gas constantly going down the street. People say, I just can't get to where I'm going spiritually. And I'll say, reserve your sexual energy. Put the
Mm.
looky-loo eyes away, put the feelers away, keep your hands to yourself, and hold on to that spiritual vitality. So Tantra really allows people to take all of that sensual energy and direct it towards the divine and their divine path, rather than losing it out of the lower orifices.
Mm-hmm.
You transmute it and bring it up so that it can illuminate us in the subtle body, in the
Mm-hmm.
spiritual fields, rather than in the procreation fields.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, how do you feel about people that are in relationship in a loving relationship and have intercourse but don't release?
I think that's excellent. If that is what their goal is, um, having that retention, that self-restraint, sometimes it can cause medical problems like prostatitis, epididymitis. But when it's done correctly, then we're able to hold on to that vital, it's actually a substance,
Mm-hmm.
as we all know. And when we hold on to that substance, it's much better for us. In Ayurveda, they have this whole schedule. They actually consider sex one of the three primary legs of life. So they don't deny it. They don't say, oh, don't do that, naughty, naughty, bad, bad.
Mm-hmm.
They say in the wintertime, you're allowed a little bit more because
Okay.
we conserve that type of ojas energy, kapha energy in the winter. Whereas if we flip the season opposite in the summer, we should have the least amount and we should
Mm.
conserve that energy as much as possible.
That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So it's
Okay.
really just about biologics. And then we can understand, oh, it really does make a difference in spiritual development and not to have atrophy of the spiritual body because there's just
Mhm.
fuel going to it.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense that uh well I would have thought in the winter time you would want to actually keep it in because everyone's already kind of low energy, not as much sunlight. But what's the thought process with it being more? Is it like to recharge with your partner? Is that
Well, it just states that in the winter time, we have more kapha, which is that cold water earth element.
hmm
We naturally have more available to us in the winter time.
hmm
So we're allowed to expend that sexual energy a little bit more. They
I
don't say
see.
go crazy,
hmm
and
Yeah.
it just completely drain the body.
hmm
Whereas in the summertime, we're very hot. Our skin tends to be drier. Our tissues go through a more drying process because of the heat. There's more inflammation inside. So they
hmm
say retain it as much as possible.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. One question that's coming through is the topic of Amrita because this is related, right? It's like the essence of life, basically, right? And some people say that Amrita is the fluids around the pineal. Some people say that it's vaginal secretions. Some people say that it's like more of uh, a liquid that is produced in the brain that isn't really accessible to us uh, except through meditation. Uh, how have you been taught about Amrita?
Well, in Ayurveda, it's very similar to Ojas. So, Ojas basically is when all the tissues are functioning perfectly, when the digestion is perfect, when all seven tissue layers are functioning at their optimal metabolism, Ojas is created in the tissues. But then eventually, Ojas makes its way through the mental chambers, through the mind channels, which are very minute. They even say invisible, and out into the subtle body. Now, if we don't have that first original Ojas, so we're born with a certain amount of Ojas in the heart, and then
Okay.
we produce a certain amount of Ojas through essentially good living, good nutrition, good thought processes.
hmm
If that ojas is built up to a point or stimulated to a point, Sometimes it's just stimulated also.
Mm-hmm.
Then they say that it begins to circulate more into the central nervous system through the brain channels in Ayurveda out into the mental channels so that people become content and peaceful.
Okay.
Because you can meditate all you want, but if you don't have proper ojas or amrita,
Mm-hmm.
contentment.
Mm,
People don't feel grounded and supported in the mind channels.
mm-hmm.
Now, when we begin to have enough retention of this ojas and build up this spiritual energy, then they say in meditation, we're able to bring it and elicit it out. Oftentimes, they say it drips down from the back of the brain cavity.
Mm-hmm.
Some people also, especially in Tantra, it is associated with sexual fluids because
Mm,
Ojas is also in the sexual fluids.
mm-hmm. Okay.
But our goal is to have a Ojas and Amrita savings account. We
Okay.
don't have to spend it. Our
Mm,
goal is to have the biggest savings account possible so that when we leave this physical body, we are well fueled and able to travel beyond this physical body. Or if we really want to work on doing deep spiritual work, deep spiritual expansion, if we don't have that ojas or that amrita, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to
mm,
happen. We can think about it, we can try, we can meditate till the cows come home, and it's like having atrophied arms.
mm,
You can't do the work
mm-hmm.
because the
Mm-hmm.
ojas is gone.
Okay.
And the Amrita will not develop because in Ayurveda, Amrit or Amrita is the nectar of immortality.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa, why would I want to collect that in my physical body? Is my physical body going to be immortal?
Mm,
Not necessarily.
not necessarily.
But my mind can be cured so that my soul and my mind are well fueled for my next journey. Rather than dying out of this physical body and just being like, "Meow," and having no spiritual patency or strength. Because it's like going to the gym,
Right.
developing a strong spiritual body. The only difference is people can't see it.
Yeah, it brings up a
Like a lot of
question.
muscles.
Yeah, it brings up a question like, do you think that the Ojas and the Amrita do you think there's a direct correlation to the ability for a very advanced yogi to be able to leave their body at will? Like they decide, like Paramahansa Yogananda decided, I'm gonna leave on this date, and then
Mhm.
he just shot out of his body and never came back.
Absolutely. The opposite is a very good example. Let's say we get into our advanced ages and we are drained of ojas or are absent in that amrita, then we die when our body just gives out.
Okay.
And
Okay.
the spiritual ability to function is diminished or even hardly there. So
Mm-hmm.
if we're able to build that spiritual strength, then that's when they say the yogi or the advanced aspirant can just sit back and say, okay, that's it, I'm done. Poof,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
leave their body because their astral or spiritual vessel is strong and patent.
Mm-hmm.
Versus if we've lived our lives and just drained ourselves and worked ourselves into a stressful, state of physical decay, mental decay, spiritual decay, we're not going to have that option. We're going to
Okay.
die when the body just gives up.
Yeah.
And we may not have the spiritual whereabouts to be in control of what happens after that because we are in control of it.
Okay. And then it brings up the question of like people like Saint Germain.
Mhm.
right? That fully ascended with their body and went up to the to the next frequency or the next dimension, whatever you want to call it. Uh, how do, what are your beliefs around that?
Well, I've seen a lot of weird things in this lifetime. We also learn about, I'm looking at a picture on my bookshelf about the immortal yogi. The yogi that is still here in physical form and can show up whenever they want. And these things really, really intrigued me. And that's one of the subject matters that has been taught in the Himalayan shamanic tantric practices,
Okay.
how to work the energy through the body, how to create that, exiting vessel, how to leave, how to come back, how to retrieve the energy, how to project the energy. I was just sharing recently in an interview, the first time I ever had an outer body experience was when I was 4. So I've
Oh, wow.
always known that you could bilocate.
Okay.
Always have known it. I
Uh-huh.
didn't always know how to do it though. It only would happen like during stress or during really peaked emotions. And so
Mm.
when I went through the tantric training, my tantric guru would say, now, okay, this is how you use the energy. This is how you don't use the energy. This is
Mm.
where you leave the body. You don't leave the body over here like that. And
Mm.
this is how you recover from it. These are the different exercises. So it really brought me back to a state of stability. But if you really look at it closely, the ultimate goal would be something along the lines of Saint Germain or the immortal yogi. But I
Mm-hmm.
haven't gotten there for sure. I often tell students, I'll tell you when I'm gone. I'll try to come back and do like Morse code. Boop, 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 these
Uh-huh.
numbers. But we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've been to the location where Saint Germain was said to have ascended, and there is an energy there that I felt where he his energy is still present there, but it's not on the physical plane. And you know, it's it's really interesting. It it's a very beautiful location that have you been there before?
No, no.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's there's one that's like the official spot, but then my buddy's taken me like half a mile into the woods where I believe it actually happened, and that location feels more energetically like where he ascended. So, these kind of things fascinate me. I've had some friends share with me that they start floating like up off the mountain, like they're like starting to go, and then they'll have to like grab a root and try to anchor back down, specifically on Mount Shasta,
Mm,
which is which is considered the root chakra of the earth, but also can flip to be the crown chakra of the earth, is what I've been told. So I feel more of the rooted nature there versus the crown, but I also feel a lot of that really crown energy as well around that area. So it's hard to tell, but one of my goals in life is to go to all 7 chakras of the planet and do and see what happens, basically, like see what activates inside myself through that journey and take people on that journey. So that's in the books, in the records, to happen in the future. So have you been to Mount Shasta before?
I've driven past it on my way to Ashland. I lived in Ashland, Oregon for about a year. So I've gone past it and I've often said, oh, I want to go there. But I'm always en route somewhere else.
Okay. Yeah. I would highly recommend it. I think you would really connect with it. And it's a really sacred space. And it's still small enough where it's still really pristine. You know, like the town is still pretty small. It's not really commercialized too much. It's just for the deeper seekers.
On my bucket list.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So, you know, Kali Ma, right? We're talking about the Himalayan tantric practice. Uh, Kali Ma is depicted as this Hindu deity, right? With the tongue coming out, several arms holding knives and skulls, and then she's got, I think, a string of men's heads, 10, I believe, right?
Up
That
to 50.
up to 50. Okay. And it's interesting because the way I perceive that, and I'm really curious if this is correct, but those all those heads are like the different aspects of ego that has been decapitated. Is that
Absolutely.
correct?
So usually the garland of skulls or garland of decapitated heads is also referred to as the Varna Mala. And the Varna Mala is 50 heads. Now, what's really interesting about her garland of decapitated heads or demon heads
Mm-hmm.
is the number 50 represents the 50 letters in Kali Ma's alphabet. So the original Sanskrit language has 50 letters in it.
Mm.
And each one of those heads is what's called a shabda or a sound that we place on the body to eliminate abnormalities or to decapitate part of, some sort of portion of the ego. Because really, what makes us go wrong?
Mm-hmm.
Usually, ego. Maybe it's trauma, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But when we recite the Sanskrit alphabet, it's placed over 50 locations on the body, from the top of the head all the way down to the tips of the toes. And
Mm-hmm.
each sound, like ah, e, e, creates a vibrational banishment of abnormalities. And so that garland of skulls represents those 50 letters, and they say that Kalima is the first spoken sound that comes out, representing the divine language of Sanskrit.
Okay, okay, that's really interesting. I didn't realize that. And so, are these locations that the letters are placed on the body, is there are they related to these acupressure points? Are they related to these meridians on the body as well?
Well, in Sanskrit or Ayurvedic medicine, they don't go by the Chinese medicine meridian or acupuncture points. They go by marmas.
Okay.
So marmas came in an earlier time frame. And so many of the sounds and where they're placed link up with either a marma, which is very close to an acupuncture point, in terms of like energetic functions. So they line up with different marmas and they line up with different chakras as well.
That's so interesting. That's so
Yeah,
interesting.
it's wonderful.
Have you gone through that practice of writing them all over your body?
Yeah, oh my gosh. I spent a long time engrossed drawing all these, stick figures and things and putting all the alphabet letters on and then drawing all the chakras and telescoping different formats and trying to decide how come does it line up? How come it went over here? Is it my throat chakra? So if you look at the old drawings of the chakras. The root chakra has the four red petals. The Swadhisthana has the six yellow or orange petals, and then the
Mhm.
10 yellow all these different petals. Well, in the old illustrations, there's little Devangari drawings, which is an alphabet. So if we just isolated the third eye chakra down to the root. So we've got 2, we've got 16, we have 12, 10, 6, 4, and so on. There's 50 petals.
Oh, wow.
And one of the Sanskrit letters sits in each chakra petal. Minus the
Oh,
thousand petaled Sahasrara
right,
chakra.
right. Wow, that's profound.
It's been something that has really intrigued me. One of the texts that I wrote many years ago, it's out of print, no longer published. I'll republish it at some point in the future. About the Dasha Mahavidyas and Kalima, I had several illustrations of where the petals fall with the chakra letters and all the different diagrams that I had spent endless nights scrawling and scribbling and um, just fascinated by.
That's really interesting. You know, I was looking at your Instagram before the call, and I saw some of your drawings of the 10 different versions of Kali.
Mhm.
And you know, it seems like I guess I'm really curious on, can you share about each one of the 10 and what they each represent?
Oh gosh, one of my favorite subjects ever.
Okay. All right, let's do it.
So the Adi Shakti, the primal mother, the first, the void, the womb, before there was even light or sound is Kalima. And
Hmm.
she's usually seen with beautiful pitch black skin. And many times she's seen with 10 arms, usually all holding some type of mudra or weapon. So she has like a sword to lob off our ego. She
Hmm.
has a club to give us a good little goading or a prompting saying, come over here. Or, what are you doing over there? She
Hmm.
often carries a noose to, bind us or to guide us, to pull us.
Hmm.
And then she's often seen holding a discus on one finger. And the discus can be, spinning of time. Or in
Mm.
some stories, we see the disc thrown and it
Hmm.
can cut and slice like one of those Chinese knives, the
Hmm.
spinning
Hmm.
knives. Pshoo!
Hmm.
She's often seen holding a decapitated head, really represents our head
Hmm.
and releasing our imperfect mindsets. And then she often has a bowl and she's collecting the blood from that bowl because we learn a lot when we invite the Holy Mother into our bloodstream. And
Mm.
we say, please, be in every cell of me, make me perfect as I can possibly get in this lifetime, whatever that means.
Hmm.
Um, One of the other stories about her, you often see her with her tongue sticking out and these bloody fangs, and people are like, what's up with that?
Nice.
Is she a vampire?
Uh-huh.
Well, there's this story about a demon or an asura called Rakta Bija. Rakta means blood, Bija means seed, so blood seed. And so, long story short, there was this big battle, and all the demigods were saying, oh my gosh, we're losing the battle. Call in the mother. Like, we need help. Call the mother.
Hmm.
And so, Kalima came in and whoop, straight off with his head. And then, as soon as the blood hit the ground, 1,000 more demons sprouted up.
Right.
And so she knew I have to collect all the blood. So some of the old antique photos you see her with this long tongue. And it represents her ability to sacrifice and take in all of those impurities and then to purify our blood. Because where do the seed demons actually live? Inside of us. It's
Hmm.
our own uncured egos, uncured shadow worlds, things like that.
Hmm.
Other things about the first emanation of Kali Ma, she's almost always seen naked. People say,
Mm,
how come you drew the mother so disrespectfully? You didn't even
mm,
cover her privates. I say, the mother is always Digambara, naked.
uh-huh,
She's
uh-huh.
sky clad, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so Kali Ma, she also has this wild hair. It's always out, just standing straight up everywhere. And,
Mm,
because she expands through the entire universe, just all over the place. She is the entire universe.
mm-hmm.
Um, One thing that I wanted to mention, people will say, oh, we're in the Kali Yuga.
Mm,
I say, no, we are in the Kali Yuga. It's a
mm,
different spelling. Kali is Kali, long A, long I, Kali or Kali Ma, whereas Kali is a demon that has infested this time yuga that we're in. So when we do tantric work to the Holy Mother, we say, please get that Kali out of me. And we see
uh,
that in gambling, illicit sex. There's 5 locations that the demon Kali has been banned to in this yuga or age of time.
mm.
Alcohol, gambling, illicit sex, gold, and like violence, murder,
What was the first one?
gambling, illicit sex, alcohol,
Oh, okay.
gold,
Interesting. I'm curious why gold.
greed,
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
greed in general. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, Then there's the second form of Kalima, and her name is Tara. And Tara, we have a lot of different forms of Tara, especially if you study Buddhism. But
Mm,
this form of Kalima, Tara, she's in beautiful blue skin, like the midnight sky with stars on her cheeks and stars
mm,
on her. And she's associated with the moon, the water, and our minds. They
mm,
call her Spandama. Spanda is like the vibration in the firmament before the sound came out. And they say that one of the best ways to connect with this form of the Divine Mother, Tara, is to chant Om
mm.
to
That makes
stabilize
sense.
the mind, to stabilize the waters within our body. And they say that when we do that, Tara takes us in her boat and ferries us across the turbulent waters of life so that we can, you know, find liberation sooner than later.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's
And
beautiful.
oh, I love it. The third form of the Kalima in the Dasha Mahavidyas, the tantric lineage, is light. So we see Tripura Sundari, or some people know her as Lalita Ma.
Mm,
And she's this beautiful form of the mother. She's got paler skin now, and sometimes a beautiful sari on her, beautiful, gown on. And we see her associated with light coming through and beauty and the things that we really cherish. Then we move into the fourth form of the mother, Bhuvaneshwari. And Bhuvaneshwari is this element of space. And I love how Baba, Krishna Kalidas, my guru in Tantra, he describes Bhuvaneshwari as already having set the stage. And that
mm,
the light shining through is like the movie projector. And we're just sitting in the audience watching this movie. And
mm-hmm.
when we realize Bhuvaneshwari has already set the stage and the circumstance, then we can understand life in better terms.
Mm-hmm.
I won't go too far into all of them. I actually wrote a whole book on all 10 of them. Um,
Okay.
the recent 10 photos I posted were for Navratri, the 9 nights of the goddess, and I
Okay.
haven't circulated and shared those in quite a while. But anyways, on we go to the
I,
fifth form of
I
the
have a
mother.
quick question with that. So why is it
Yes.
9 and not 10 nights?
Well, it's a different type of a different lineage.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So in the 9 nights Navratri, they celebrate 9 different forms traditionally.
Okay.
My training, I celebrate the 10 forms. So
Okay.
Victory Day, there's like 10 days and 9 nights,
Okay.
but each lineage has a slightly different understanding of the mother. It depends on where the geographics are from. The
Okay.
Hindu understanding is often different from the Himalayan tantric
Okay.
emanation.
Okay.
It's a good
Okay.
question.
Thank you for that.
So the fifth form of the mother, now we get into Chinnamasta, the one that we talked about earlier. And she's
Mm,
often seen red skin. And
mm,
she's got, like we said, her head has been self-decapitated.
mhm,
She has 3 streams of blood coming out. And when we know our subtle body, in the actual anatomy, we know we have a sushumna, an ida, and a pingala.
mhm,
Central channel, left channel. Well, this is my left channel, and
mhm,
right channel. And they crisscross, forming the intersections of the chakras. And when the head has been severed, you see the 3 streams of life force coming out.
that makes sense.
hmm And in many cases, you'll see 2 attendants on her side, usually female attendants, and they're also drinking the blood.
Hmm.
But really, we want to look at this as, what do I feed my Pingala channel, that right-sided solar Rajasic energy, and what do I feed my left channel, my Tamasic, downward moving, lunar energy, and are there any vampiric sources in those 2 channels? Because, as you know, in most spiritual goals, we want to bring the primary energy into that central spiritual channel, the Sushumna, and we want those 2 energies, the Ida, the Pingala, to become balanced and supportive rather than, up too fast or down too fast and
Hmm.
creating these imbalances in our bodies.
Hmm.
But Chinnamasta, we also see like lightning strike in the background
Hmm.
of the images of Chinnamasta because the life force is like lightning, shoot,
Hmm.
comes right down on the top of the head
Hmm.
and enlivens us.
That's
Now, the
beautiful.
sixth form of the mother. So we've gone through Kali, Tara, Tripura Sundari. We went through, no, Chinnamasta's number 6. Bhairavima, Bhairavima. So the fifth one, who switch 5 and 6. So
Uh-huh.
Bhairavima is fire. You always see her with fire in the background. Usually she's in the smashana or the burning grounds, the pyre grounds, the cremation grounds. And she represents our internal fiery force, tapas, the ability to burn, to transmute, to transform, to have that internal discipline about us, and this like fearless courageousness inside of us.
Hmm.
Or we can also associate her with, that nice fire in the Manipura chakra that gets things done, self-empowerment rather than a victimization mentality. All
Hmm.
right, then we go to Chinnamasta. Then
Uh-huh.
after lightning strikes, then we're left in darkness,
Mm.
dust. And some people call this the abyss.
Mm.
When you're in your dark night of the soul.
Right.
In the dark night of the soul, we find Dhumavati. And Dhumavati is also said to be the widow, the crone, the old woman with gray, disheveled hair and a, gray, dirty, kind of rag for clothes. And she's sitting on this cart, not even a chariot, a cart, and nothing's pulling it. There's nothing going on. She's just stuck there.
Mm.
I mean, she's not stuck, she's there. And there's often just like a crow sitting there or a crow flag you'll see. And all she doesn't have any weaponry. She has a winnowing basket, like a
Hmm.
flour sifter almost.
Hmm.
And I like to see Dhumavati as the lovely, lovely form of the mother that says, "Oh, you're torn up and tired too? Well, I'm right here with you." She doesn't come in all of her glory and glamour.
Mm-hmm.
She comes also in mirrors where we are.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, "Let me sift through your ashes. Just sit here on my carriage for a while and rest. Oh, you're sick? That's okay. Sit and rest."
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are afraid of Dhumavati because she's always in the darkness.
Mm-hmm.
We're often afraid of our own dark night of the soul, or when we get, fallen and we're in the abyss. But I found that Dhumavati is one of the most passionate forms of the mother, the most
Mm-hmm.
compassionate, I should say.
Okay.
She just
Mm-hmm.
says, "I'm here with you. You don't have to worry. Divinity is still intact. It just is going through a recycling phase.
Mm-hmm.
The phoenix, before the phoenix can rise, it's burnt, it's in ashes."
Yeah.
And then we come out of Dhumavanti, we come out of that dark corridor and we come into Matangi. Matangi Mon, she's bright green. And she's got this
Mm.
bright green parrot on her shoulder, and she's playing a veena. She's actually the left-hand path equivalent to Saraswati, who is also
Mm.
with a veena.
Mm-hmm.
So tantric, Matangi.
Mm-hmm.
Right hand path, Saraswati. So Matangi, you see her with books and art supplies. Uh-oh. I went out of order again. Back up, back up, back up.
It's
Dhumavati.
okay.
Before you get out of, once you leave Dhumavati, Bagalamukhi. We can't forget Bagalamukhi.
Okay.
So she has this appearance. She's got a big club in her hand, and she's often got her eyes thrown back and real big. And she has snatched a hold of a demon's tongue. She's holding
Mm.
that tongue, and she looks like she's just about to club him on top of the head.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when we come into a stage of spiritual development where maybe it's better to stop, where we need to really think before we let
Mm.
out our words, to really allow the waters to circle and eddy and stay in this kind of holding pattern. So Bagalamukhi really encourages us, once you come out of Dhumavati's abyss, stop for a while.
Mm.
Give yourself time to really understand, what are you about to articulate? What are you about to put out into this world? Have you truly healed completely
Mm-hmm.
or enough?
Right.
She also, reminds us, no gossiping,
Mm-hmm.
no useless chitter chatter,
Mm-hmm.
not to talk harshly about other people. And she also teaches us how to deal with that when it comes to us. So
Mm-hmm.
in Tantra, we learn certain techniques to transmute our words, transmute and understand when somebody else is harsh talking us or throwing shade, how to compassionately counteract that and just say, "Hmm,
Mm-hmm.
no, we're not
Mm-hmm.
doing that."
Right.
Then we go into Matangi because Matangi is all about expression,
Mm-hmm.
writing, painting, poetry, song, dance, music.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we want to go through that dark night of the soul first. And then we want to go through that holding pattern with Bagalamukhi and really contemplate, what is in my heart's song?
Mm-hmm.
What's in my soul's artwork?
Mm-hmm.
Then we finally go into Kamalama, the 10th form. And
Mm-hmm.
she's usually dressed in all white. There's two elephants raining down water or Amrit on her.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Ojas pouring down onto her. And then from her hands, she has her hands out and there's coins.
Mm.
What we often understand is, boons, spiritual artha, spiritual resources, spiritual knowledge. Um, and she's always standing in a beautiful lotus. Maybe her other hands are holding lotus flowers.
Hmm.
So anytime we look at the 10 forms of the mother, it's always important to ask, what's she holding?
Right.
You know,
Right.
Kali Ma, the first emanation, is also holding her hand out saying, don't fear. Abhaya, mudra, don't fear. And she has one hand out granting boons, but you got to get past all the weapons first. And you
Right.
know what the weapons mean. You know,
Right. That's clearing out the ego. One thing that feels like interesting is that the dark night of the soul came after the lightning. For most people and for me, I had the dark night of the soul first, and then the lightning of the Kundalini shot up.
Mhm.
So is there any distinction there between that?
That's a really, really good point. So when we look at Chinnamasta, it's that decapitation,
Mm-hmm.
the decapitation of the ego. And that is what often causes people to go into that dark night of the soul.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, well, who am I now?
Right.
What am I doing? What's my purpose? I don't understand anymore. Now I'm in the darkness. Ah!
Right.
Everything taken away from me, or what I thought was me was taken away. But it's also the indication that that Kundalini is striking. So for some people, we have to look at the difference between when Kundalini enters us versus when Kundalini rises up. Because
Okay.
as when Kundalini is risen prematurely, there's often a lot of wonky stuff that happens.
Mm-hmm.
It's like blowing out a dirty pipe.
Mm-hmm.
Like, ooh, there's sludge. What happened
Hmm.
here?
Right.
Because the system wasn't clean.
Right.
So go through the receiving of the Kundalini, the waiting, the purification. Hold your tongue, wait,
Mm-hmm.
then decide how are you going to beautifully articulate it out through your soul, and
Mm-hmm.
then the blessings come. I
Mm-hmm.
find that one of the things in the spiritual community is people are too, I don't want to say eager, impatient, and they want
Mm-hmm.
Kundalini. Then I want it right. And they often think, oh, I've had this Kundalini experience, Kundalini this, save it up. Wait until you've got enough to purchase a whole house
Mm-hmm.
rather than a piece of candy, you
Right.
know?
Right.
And wait until the Kundalini has had a time to truly marinate and to work through the system and then check all the systems. Are there irregularities? I explain it sometimes like Frodo and the ring. He gets like Schmeagol gets the ring and he's like,
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and we see that with Kundalini in some people. They
Mm-hmm.
do all the work, they do all the tapas, they receive the Kundalini, and then what do they do with it?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they go a little wonky. They do that enchantment and vampirism instead.
Right. Right.
Yeah. They're not truly purified yet,
Right.
but they've still been given the juice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Whereas in Tantra, we really try to focus in on the shadow self and say, am I Frodo with the ring or am I Schmeagol?
Right. Right.
And
Exactly.
Bakalamukhi is standing right there with her club.
Right. 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 So
And
this.
even the Pungi, she also has a sword.
Okay.
Like that Vina, she's got the book, she's got the artwork, and she's
That's
got the songs, but she still is holding, you know,
check yourself. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
double check.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing those ten beautiful aspects of Kali. And it brings up the question of Kali, went on this rampage, and maybe you can talk about it a little bit. There's this story of how she just like goes crazy, starts kind of losing it, and then the only way she stops is when Shiva lays down under her, and then she steps on him, and she remembers who she is. So, are you familiar with that story?
Yes, yes. So part of the story, once think about the most pristine mother. She would go to any lengths to protect her children.
Mm-hmm.
And once a mother's fury has been sparked, it can be difficult until justice has been made to calm that mother back down. Same thing with the father as well.
Mm-hmm.
But with Kali Ma, she went into such a rage because things were not being managed properly. And one of the story key components is that Kali Ma, without Shiva, Shiva we know represents pure consciousness, pure undisturbed consciousness. So Kali without Shiva is chaos,
Mm, mm-hmm.
and Shiva without Kali is Shava, dead.
Mm,
I like to also think of it this way. Let's say I have a wire, but no insulatory covering on it. You touch it, you're going to get shocked.
right.
Whereas if you place that insulation of pure consciousness over it, then you have a nice insulated source of power. Without the inside spark of energy, it's just a cord. If it's
Mm-hmm.
not plugged in, it's just a dead cord.
Right.
And so that image of Kali Ma being absolute chaos and uncontrollable is like a downed wire,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
just sparking and shocking everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also a warning or an encouragement that when we work with Kundalini, because Kali Ma's name is also Kundalini Ma, when
Mm,
we work with Kundalini, when we work with, high grade spiritual practices, or when we work with Kali Ma, that it's very important to be grounded by pure consciousness. That's why Shiva's laying on the ground also.
mm-hmm.
He's grounding us, saying,
Mm,
don't do the spiritual work until you have found a pureness in your consciousness. And that without one, the other is dangerous.
mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That
And
makes
then plus they say that, the mother, she's happiest when she has Shiva by her side.
mm-hmm.
And we need that Ida, Pingala, that male, female, lunar, solar, yin, yang. And without it, it's just everything's
Mm-hmm.
balanced. We have people who are like, oh, it's all about the mother and only the mother. We have people, it's all about the father, all about the father. You can't separate the two.
Mm-hmm.
They're one.
Right.
They cannot be divided. And the stories show them in division to show us what happens inside of us when we're lopsided. If we're
Mm-hmm.
only doing, masculine work or father work or Shiva work or, solar work, and if we're only doing lunar, feminine, etc., we're going to develop an instability because we need to nurture both sides.
For sure. For sure. Yeah, I love that. I love that perspective. And I love how in the Indian Hindu culture, it's so clear in these images, right? But then there's so much depth to them, and I love that. It's there's so much to receive from that, you know.
Yeah.
And so what has I'm just really curious, what has been like your major, like for yourself, right? What have been some of your major breakthroughs or um profound experiences that you've had from going into this Himalayan tantric shamanism?
Oh, I have a laundry list of the things I lost.
Okay.
I
Okay.
needed, it's like going through the washing machine.
Uh,
Rinse, wash, repeat,
mm-hmm,
rinse, wash, repeat.
mm-hmm,
I had so much shadow work, whether it was all mine, some ancestral, some of it was slopped onto me through my younger years. Some of it was my own karmic entanglement that I did. And one of the biggest things was overcoming alcoholism.
mm,
I became an alcoholic when I was 12 years old. And I
Whoa.
struggled with it for years and decades.
Wow.
I would have long spans of sobriety and then short stints of sobriety. And one of the things that I really wanted to do is to uproot all of the inside underpinnings of why that actually sat there. I don't just want to say, oh, I don't drink anymore.
Right.
I want to be able to say, that's not in my system anymore.
Right.
So, um, other things, different types of neurotic, we all have neurotic desires.
Hmm.
And I had some very gripping aspects of my personality that I was like, those are things I wouldn't want people to openly see about me.
Mm.
And if I'm not willing to be completely transparent, if there's an aspect of me that I kind of like, shh, quiet,
Hmm.
I might not want that there.
Right.
And I'm not saying that the outside world is ever going to understand who we all are. I'm not saying fit in with the normal world because Lord knows I don't fit in quite right. That's all right. But I didn't want anything that elicited shame, guilt, resentment inside of me. And I was willing to go to any length to find peace inside of myself, to not be controlled by any of my lower shadow selves, and to be able to say, I'm good.
Hmm.
I'm restful and I'm at peace, and
Hmm.
not to let any of those lower chakras manipulate me. One of the other things that was really big for me is as a very young child, there were hmm, occult practices that I was exposed to. And I was
Mm.
young to be practicing them, obviously.
Hmm.
But I was exposed to some very nefarious individuals,
Hmm.
and that caused some deep energetic disturbances. And I went through Ayurveda and I went through yoga and I went through the Sant path, the lineage of saints, and I went through all those practices, but there were still seeds that were bothersome to me. But I was like,
Mm.
this is from that, and I want that gone.
Hmm.
And so finally, in my more recent decade of training, I've really been able to let go of all that and not just let go of it, to turn that rotten seed into a beautiful thing
Hmm.
and say, look, the bad seed got turned into a bloom, and
Hmm.
isn't it a beautiful bloom? And to take, the neurotic energies or the unhealthy energies and flip them, transmute them into fuel, spiritual fuel that actually does me good rather than having to suppress or work with or, negate and just simply say, look, everybody's on board inside with me.
Hmm.
All of my shadow selves are all working together. And I think that that's, really where we need to go when we're working towards self-actualization,
Hmm.
is what's really going on inside myself.
Right.
And yes, I know the material body is temporary, but I'm in this material body for who knows, maybe 50 more years.
Right.
And I don't want it to be a living hell.
Right.
I want it to be, pleasant
Hmm.
and something that I can do my soul's work with instead of letting what I call the itty bitty committee inside my head being in charge. Like, no, thank you. No, thank
Right. 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 Exactly. Exactly. Well, yeah, I think that those are really like phenomenal and beautiful, huge, really important takeaways and experiences that this has brought into your life through that journey. It's really profound. So, yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think that this may be a segue into veganism, where how long have you been a vegan now?
This stint 3 years again. So I
Wow.
fallen off of veganism due to social circumstances. I had a short stint where when I started studying the left hand path often incorporates meat in their
Mm,
rituals.
mm-hmm,
And then I finally got to a point where I was like, no, this is not okay in my body.
mm-hmm.
And so I went completely back to veganism again.
Okay.
Um, I've had long periods of time of vegetarianism and veganism. And the last time that I fell out of it, this time back, I said, never again. I now can see the true, profound spiritual disability in myself. I'm not judging anybody else. But in myself, I was awakened to the fact that eating animal products is a spiritual handicap.
Mm. Yeah, it's really interesting because there are some teachers that say fish is okay. Even if you go down to the Amazon and there's very strict dietas, there's still allow certain fish that's very clean from the river and from the ocean, I believe. And uh, you know, it seems like it's kind of one of those things that's right on the edge there, right? Where it's like some people partake, some people don't, and whereas like chicken and beef and pork, those kind of things are very kind of like do or don't, you know? And and so I'm curious about that. If in the lineages you've studied, if you saw anything around fish.
Mhm. Well, in Ayurveda, just in general, all meat and animal milk is considered tamasic.
Okay.
So tamasic, we know, obscures our mental channels and shadows and causes that downward flow of spiritual energy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we're talking about living in the Amazon and scarcity of food and things
Mm-hmm.
of that nature, Ayurveda is not against eating meat at all.
Mm-hmm.
But they do recognize it as tamasic. Now, when I was initiated into the Satmat lineage, the first thing my Guru Ma said, no meat for spiritual success, no milk from an animal for spiritual success. And I was like, hmm. All right. Well, that's not a far cry for me because I've been either vegan or vegetarian for many, many, many years.
Mm-hmm.
But at that time, I had been eating meat again. And I was like, okay. So I had gone completely without,
Mm-hmm.
but there was still alcohol in the.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when we look at, let's just say, trying to obtain mental peace and spiritual strength. One of the things that I say is if you feel fear, worry, persecution, if you feel victimized, if you feel a sense of emotional stress, is it completely from you and from you only? Just because you feel a feeling or think a thought doesn't mean it actually came from you.
Mm-hmm.
As we know, you could be sitting with a friend, and if they're in a really foul mood now, suddenly you're in a foul mood. It's like it got on you.
Right.
But when we eat meat, when we drink the milk from an animal, and I'm not talking about the cow at your farm that you love and you take care of, your family cow. I'm talking about industry meat.
Right.
Industry. You have to digest the consciousness of the animal.
Right.
And the majority of those animals are held in a state of torture
Mm-hmm.
and very harsh circumstances.
Yeah.
Even if we're talking about being a hunter and gatherer, no matter what you do, when you kill an animal, like my mom and I used to raise animals, and when it
Mm-hmm.
was time to eat, sometimes it was go catch that chicken. That chicken did not want to die. And
Right.
we treated that chicken very well. They were my pets.
Mm-hmm.
A rabbit is still going to scream bloody murder when you kill it, no matter how fast you are, no matter how compassionate you've treated the animal, that consciousness of the animal is now going to course through me.
Right.
And I have taken on that violent karma. Whether I see the killing of the animal or whether I see the condition of the cow in the industry, I'm still involved in that karma. It's like being complicit to murder, or
Right.
being an accomplice. And I'm not trying to make any meat eater or milk drinker feel bad at all. This
Mm-hmm.
has just been for me in my journey.
Mm-hmm.
Once I went back to eating meat at one point, I noticed feelings of victimization came back. Feeling of something is preying on me. The spirits are after me, or
Mm.
so and so is this towards me. This feeling of being prey
Mm-hmm.
came back to me.
Interesting. Uh-huh.
The feelings of worry, fear, um, all sorts of different emotions come through the consumption of the consciousness of another animal.
Yeah.
Whereas a tree that drops fruit is not going through some epinephrine, norepinephrine, cortisol stress reaction.
Right.
Apricot fell from the tree. Oh, you eat it.
Right.
Beans that come off the stalk, they're not going through this prey predator stage.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, I decided that in order to completely purify myself, I could not be complicit in any type of harm towards another animal. That
Mm-hmm.
includes not wearing leather. That includes, not even honey. Not
Mm-hmm.
some people say, "Oh, I'm a vegan." And I'll say, "Where'd that ghee come from? What cow did that ghee come from? Where did
Mm.
that milk come from? Did it come from that nasty farm industry over there, or did it
Right.
come from your grandpa's cow?"
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
but without judging anybody, Guru Ma, my right hand path guru,
Mm-hmm.
she always says, if you have a perfectly good source of food and nutrition without harming or complicating yourself with the karma of another animal's consciousness, why wouldn't you take that option?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because milk also is an intoxicant. Any cheese addict out there, you know what I'm talking about. You take one slice of
I'm
cheese and
one
you're
of
like,
them.
oh.
I'm one of them.
Cheese was my last frontier
Oh
before I went.
yeah, that's the hardest one to let go of for sure.
Because I've done pescatarian, I've done
Hmm.
ovo-lacto, I've done, I'm vegetarian, but I still have cheese.
Hmm.
And then finally, once I went fully vegan, no honey, no ghee, no milk, no dairy, just none of it. I had such a profound shift in my consciousness
Hmm.
because I was not dealing with having to digest another being's consciousness, even
Yeah.
through meat, even through cheese. Um, we were talking, I'm doing a big nutrition series right now in the yoga teacher training program.
Hmm.
And talking the other day about protein, people are like, well, you're going to be deficient in protein. I was like, first of all, when we eat protein, that's not what our body uses. All protein we consume, let's say a piece of beef, um, we can't use that beef to make a protein. So, like, what is made of protein in our body? DNA is made of protein, hormones are made of protein, bones have protein, skin, muscles, they all have protein. But protein has to be built inside your cells
Right.
from amino acids.
Hmm.
So amino acids are what we need, not protein.
Hmm.
And actually, in 1971, there was an author that wrote a book. Um, Gosh, well, I won't quote somebody's name because that might be rude. Anyways, the term incomplete protein was coined. Nobody had ever used that term before, incomplete protein.
Mm.
Because when
Interesting.
once you decide to go vegan, people are like, oh, you're going to be deficient. But trust me, I am not deficient in anything. If
Hmm.
anything, I'm a slight bit chubby. Anyways, um, when we eat protein, especially animal protein, all of it has to be deassembled and turned back into amino acids
Yes.
so
Hmm.
that it can enter the cell and then turn into a biologically usable protein.
Hmm.
And people will say, oh, but if you're vegan, you're going to be missing the 9 essential amino acids. So there's 20 total amino acids. 11 the body can make and form and mismatch however way it needs to, but there's 9 essential amino acids that have to be consumed through diet. And they're
Hmm.
so elementary and easy. Beans and rice, beans and nuts, beans and seeds, nuts and seeds. It's the most elementary food combinations ever. And then there's a ton of foods that are full amino acid spectrums. So buckwheat, quinoa, hemp, chia, mung beans, soy, edamame, things like that. They have all 20 amino acids.
Hmm.
So if I don't need meat, why bother?
Hmm.
If I can get all 20 amino acids through just basic, simple, easy living, eating, and not kill anything, why wouldn't I do that? Because it lightens my karmic load.
Right.
It lightens my karmic consciousness problems,
Hmm.
and it alleviates my entire body, mind, and subtle body from tamas, that heavy, wet cloth that goes over us that makes it harder to achieve why we're even here, our soul's purpose.
Hmm.
And I really feel that the food industry has just lied to us in many, many ways. It's much
Yeah.
cheaper to eat vegan. Beans, rice, nuts, seeds, fruit, vegetables. Ooh, so complicated, you know? I happen to be in a relationship, and one of the inhabitants here, or my partner, he's a chef and he's a
Oh,
vegan.
that's nice.
Oh my gosh, I never go without all the beautiful Ayurvedic spices. So I believe that everybody owes it to themselves to try to be vegan for a while and just, I tell people, humor me and be like your own personal laboratory and see
Hmm.
if you don't find that extra level of contentment, that extra level of peace that may be elusive.
Hmm.
Or if you're already content and at peace and joyous, what if it's only at a 5 out of 10 level? What if you could turn it up
Hmm.
even more? What
Hmm.
if your reality could become even clearer and brighter just by eliminating the confusion of animal consciousness overlapped with your
Hmm.
consciousness?
Hmm.
And for me, I really have noticed a massive difference. I'll never go back. I'll never go back because there's no need to.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. There's one thing that I am really curious about, which is the your blood type. They say that for certain blood types, there's certain diets that are more beneficial and more aligned. So I know Ayurveda talks about that, right?
Ayurveda does not really touch on blood.
Oh,
Now,
okay.
we do talk about body types.
Right.
So if you're a Kapha body type, if you're a Pitta body type, if you're a Vata body type, but veganism can be successfully adopted by all of them. Now that,
Okay.
if I was to break out some of my Ayurveda books right now, there's all sorts of meat and dairy mentioned in there, but we have to remember that's for the sick. Those
Ah,
are remedies.
okay.
Infertility or remedies for emaciation or remedies for tuberculosis or
Okay.
remedies for, gastrointestinal imbalances. If
Hmm.
we look at our bodies, and like I said, I'm not judging anybody at all because I have been a meat eater, a milk drinker, a cheese addict.
Right, right.
You just look at our biology. We don't have carnivore mouths. Carnivore mouths only open and close. Chomp, 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 chomp. And these little eye teeth, those are not canines. Those are just little tiny bumps. We don't have the protruding snouts needed to be carnivores. We have the side to side mouths
Hmm.
of more consistent with either omnivores or herbivores.
Right.
But the other thing is when we go vegan, we recognize that carnivore intestines are much shorter. They don't have as long of a transit through the intestinal passageway, and we don't have carnivore intestinal builds.
Right.
That's one of the reasons why we have so many gut biome problems, because our bodies are trying to digest animal dairy and animal meat. And so we have to produce certain types of bacteria to putrefy and go through that meat or, decomposition inside of our guts. And it
Mhm.
causes an imbalance because it's in our guts for too long because we don't have carnivore guts.
Right.
So now everybody's, oh, I have to have a prebiotic and a postbiotic and a something sort of bedtime biotic
Mhm.
because their bacteria is all out of balance, trying to digest what their gut is not even set up to do.
Mhm.
So a lot of times, once we eliminate more and more animal products from our system, the whole bacterial setup in our guts shift, and that changes everything in the body.
Mhm.
Everything. Inflammation goes down. But, then you'll have your camp of people who say, I tried vegan and I got really sick.
Mhm.
And usually they're just a lousy nutritional composition.
Yeah, they're not taking in enough. I remember one of my friends in college, he he went vegan for the animals, and
Good.
he was eating French fries
No,
and
no,
candy.
no,
You
no,
know what I
no.
mean?
If you go vegan, you can't be gobbling up a bunch of empty calories and junk food and frozen food and even eating out at restaurants. They use the lowest quality of food ingredients typically, unless you're going to really, really, really high-end restaurants. Even
Hmm.
then, they put too much butter, too much milk, too much, all this different stuff in it to stimulate, your craveability, to make you want to come back, to entertain you. And food is a fuel. Oh, I love to eat. My lunch today was phenomenal. I was just in there, just loving it up. But we have to really look at, are we actually eating a balanced diet?
Right.
Most people who I know who have gone vegan and they're like, no, I had to go back to eating meat because I was anemic or I was this or I was that. They either have underlying health diseases that need to be treated first before they're going to be successful, or they need actual cooking lessons. They need
Hmm.
to know how to combine their food. And you can't become a vegan and just eat trash.
Hmm.
And too many people eat a lot of trash, and it's the trash making them sick, not the lack of meat.
Hmm. Yeah, I know when I tried veganism, I had some big spiritual, like positive, very positive, uplifting, up leveling is the word I'm looking for, experiences. And it was subtle. It was subtle, but I definitely, for people that, for me, I just seems as though I was getting more and more sensitive. And so the more sensitive I became to energy, it makes sense that if I'm eating an animal that was suffering, then I'm going to take that on and bring that as, have to transmute that and alchemize it, right? And that's more work because there's enough aspects of this reality that are trying to poison this body or trying to control our thoughts or even just walking down the street sometimes I pick up energy because somebody's in a rough place, and that all needs to be transmuted because I don't want to carry that, right?
And to circle back, we were talking about that Ojas and Amrita earlier.
Yeah.
If I'm not having to worry about any of the alchemization of meat and milk, I have a lot more available to make Ojas and Amrit.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
If my mind is not bogged down by animal consciousness and, all these different energies that I've taken in by eating their byproducts, then I have more bioavailability of my prana, and I have more bioavailability of my own ojas. And the other thing that I wanted to make sure to mention, one thing that I personally noticed, and like I said before, I'm not judging anybody because I've been there. I've been on both sides, and I've done each side, meat eating, not eating. We oftentimes become aware that there is a level of spiritual warfare out there.
Mm-hmm.
When we are no longer, to use the word loosely and lightly, a predator by consuming,
Mm-hmm.
by you know, eating the life and life force of another animal, when we no longer have that signature, the smell of being a predator, whether we feel we're a predator or not, when we no longer are, that spiritual warfare drops
Mm.
dramatically
Mm-hmm.
because predator begets predator.
Mm-hmm.
And when we do not prey on other people, and when we don't prey on the helpless ones, then I have found for myself much less out there preys on me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like breaking a karmic cycle,
Mm-hmm.
or at least that's been my observation,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the last few years. I've
Mm-hmm.
really noticed that sense of spiritual warfare, it just is not affecting me anymore. I'm like, no, the
Mm-hmm.
Ojas is bright.
Right.
Earth
Right.
is that force field, if you want to call it.
That's a good t-shirt. The Ojas is
Yeah.
bright.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Christie, it's been such an honor to chat with you. We're a little over 2 hours now, and I think we're due for a second part.
Oh, I'd love it.
So I'd love to invite you back on, and I think we I think we have a lot more we can talk about. And this has been really beautiful. It's been an honor to learn from you and to hear your beautiful stories and experiences. So uh, I'd love to schedule another
Absolutely.
episode as well.
Absolutely. I'd like to thank you for having me on here. And, for anybody listening, I hope that you find inspiration, not criticism at all. That you find, that extra spark to maybe experiment with different things in your life
Mhm.
and open up to different ideas and to really take your spiritual journey as like an experiment lab and
Mhm.
see what works for you. And then, leave the rest behind, of
Right,
course.
right. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much. Until next time, Dr. Christie, thank you again. Take care.
Thank you.